In this video, we're going to talk about how to identify key features of quadratic functions in standard form. So standard form of a quadratic function is f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We can identify key characteristics of a quadratic function from its equation in standard form. The y-intercept will be at 0, c, because remember, if we find the y-intercept, we're going to substitute x equals 0. Well, if we substitute x equals 0 into this equation, that's going to give us f of 0 is equal to c. The x-intercepts can be found by setting f of x equal to 0 and solving for x, because remember, the x-intercepts occur where y equals 0. The equation of the axis of symmetry can be found by using x equals negative b over 2a, and that's also going to give us the x-coordinate of the vertex. And that is because the axis of symmetry is going to pass through the vertex. The axis of symmetry is a vertical line, so that's why it's going to pass through the x-coordinate of the vertex. So you can actually find all of this information using Desmos. All we need to do is go to Desmos and type our equation and then know where to look to find the information we need. So suppose we're working with the equation y equals x squared plus 4x plus 3. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to Desmos and do y equals x squared plus 4x plus 3. And you always may need to zoom in or just click and drag your graph so you can see everything better. Remember, the maximum or minimum is going to be the vertex. So in this case, I have a minimum point. I just click on that. So -2, -1 is my vertex. So the axis of symmetry is going to be a vertical line. So remember, a vertical line has an equation x equals. And it's going to be x equals the x-coordinate of this vertex. So you see if I type x equals -2, you see I can graph my axis of symmetry, right? I know it's the axis of symmetry because it passes through the middle of my parabola. And remember also it's the axis of symmetry because if I fold my parabola in half along the axis of symmetry, both sides of my parabola are going to match up. Also, I can find the x-intercepts, and the nice thing about Desmos is I just have to click on where my graph crosses the x-axis. So this parabola has two x-intercepts at -3, 0 and -1, 0. But remember, a parabola can have 0, 1, or 2 x-intercepts. To find the y-intercept, all I need to do is click on the point where the graph crosses the y-axis, and you can see here that the y-intercept is at 0, 3. Okay, so Desmos can actually find all of this information for us. So let's identify the key characteristics of the parabola represented by f of x equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Desmos, and I'm going to type in all of this equation. So I have x squared minus 2x minus 8. I can't see everything, so I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to move my parabola over. If I click on this point here, it gives me the coordinates of the vertex. Okay, so I know the vertex is 1, -9. So I know the axis of symmetry is going to pass through that x-coordinate of the vertex, so the axis of symmetry is going to be x equals 1. So if you're taking a test like the ACT or the SAT, you may have to find the axis of symmetry using an equation. And remember, that's the equation x equals -b over 2a. It's going to give you the same result because remember, a is the coefficient of the square term, b is the coefficient of the x term, and c is the constant. So if I substitute -b over 2a, I'm going to get -2 over 2 times 1, which is just going to simplify to 1. Okay, so you'll get the same result even if you use Desmos. So this parabola opens up because remember a is greater than 0, so that means my parabola opens up. So this vertex is going to be a minimum value. The x-intercepts are found by just clicking on those 2 points where the graph crosses the x-axis. So they're going to be -2, 0 and 4, 0. The y-intercept, I can remember that the y-intercept is 0, c. So in this case, c is -8, so it's going to be 0, -8. But you don't have to remember that formula if you're using Desmos. You can just click on the y-intercept and you see it gives you the coordinates. So let's now try another example. Here we have f of x equals -x squared minus 4x minus 6. So I'm going to start off by typing this equation into Desmos. So I have -x squared minus 4x minus 6. Okay, so here I have a parabola that I'm going to scoot over here so I can see. If I click on this point, okay, so you can see -2, -2 is the vertex. The axis of symmetry is going to be x equals, and then remember it's going to be the x-coordinate of the vertex. Okay, so x equals -2. And remember, you can always double check by typing that equation you write into Desmos and making sure that in fact it does pass through the middle of the parabola and that it cuts your parabola in half. That vertex is going to be a maximum value because this is a parabola that opens down. It opens down because you see the coefficient of that x squared term is negative. The x-intercepts, well, look at this parabola here. Here's my x-axis, and then here's my parabola, so it's never going to cross the x-axis, okay? So this is actually one of those parabolas that has no x-intercepts. Now I can click on this point where it crosses the y-axis, and that gives me the coordinates of the y-intercept. Okay, so the y-intercept is going to be 0, -6. So now you can go ahead and pause the video and try doing this example on your own. Okay, so here I typed in my parabola, but you can see it's kind of like out of focus a little bit, so I'm just going to scoot this over. So if I click on these points right here, those are my vertex coordinates. So I have -3.5, -20.25. The axis of symmetry is going to be x equals the x coordinate of the vertex. That vertex is a minimum point, right? Because that parabola opens up. The x-intercepts, well, I'm just going to click on those points. You see there's 2 points where it crosses the x-axis. So those are -8, 0 and 1, 0. The y-intercept, I'm going to go over here and see where it crosses the y-axis, and it does that at 0, -8. Okay, so those are all the key characteristics of this parabola. So remember, you can identify the key features of a parabola from its equation in standard form, f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And remember, you can always use Desmos to help you answer these questions.